Hey guys, tonight, we're going to Rome. Not the Rome of marble statues glowing heroically at sunset. Not the Rome of epic speeches, decisive battles, or men dramatically stabbing each other for principles. No, tonight, we're visiting the Rome where freedom technically existed. But only between certain hours. In certain outfits. At a volume best described as inside voice, but emotionally dead. So go ahead and get comfortable. Dim the lights. Let your phone be the last glowing object in the room. And if you're wearing anything too colorful, too loud, or too expressive, don't worry, the Romans would have hated it anyway. Now, Rome loved to talk about liberty. They would not stop talking about it, actually. Libertas this, libertas that, statues of libertas everywhere, holding little caps and looking proud. But Roman freedom came with a footnote. And another footnote. And a surprisingly aggressive dress code. Because in Rome, freedom was not about doing whatever you wanted. It was about doing exactly what was expected of you. And feeling very proud that no one was actively stopping you. As long as you stayed within the lines. And those lines were everywhere. Let's start with clothing. Because Rome had opinions about fabric. If you were a Roman man of status, you wore a toga. Not because it was comfortable. It wasn't. It was a large, awkward sheet of wool that required practice, assistance, and possibly divine intervention to wear correctly. But you wore it anyway. Because the toga said, I am a citizen. And more importantly, I am not causing a scene. The toga was white, or off-white, or the slightly depressing color of unbleached sheep regret. Bright colors were suspicious. Purple was basically a legal issue. Too much purple and suddenly people were asking very pointed questions about whether you were trying to be an emperor. Which, in Rome, was not a casual aspiration. It was a lifestyle choice with a short life expectancy. Women had rules too. Always rules. A respectable Roman woman dressed modestly. Covered. Muted colors. Nothing that suggested movement, excitement, or joy. If your outfit implied that you might laugh loudly or express an opinion, that was already too much. Because clothing wasn't fashion in Rome. It was social compliance made of wool. And Rome loved compliance. Now let's talk about sound. Rome was loud. Markets shouting. Carts rattling. Animals protesting their existence. But people were expected to be controlled. Public emotional outbursts were deeply unsettling to Roman elites. Crying too hard. Laughing too loud. Gesturing aggressively. All of this suggested instability. And instability, in Rome, was a political problem. A man yelling passionately in public wasn't expressing himself. He was, potentially starting something. Which is Roman for, someone keep an eye on that guy. This is why Roman public speaking was so rigid. You could speak. Oh yes, you could speak. But only in the right place. At the right time. With the right posture. Using the correct rhetorical formulas. Improvisation was not encouraged, because emotion was dangerous. Emotion made crowds unpredictable, and Rome had a long memory of crowds getting ideas. Ideas like, maybe we don't need this ruling class. Which Rome absolutely did not like. So freedom of speech existed. As long as it sounded calm, educated, male, and slightly bored. Now, let's talk about time. Because Rome also controlled when you were allowed to enjoy yourself. Public festivals existed. They were loud. They were chaotic. They involved drinking, gambling, and people making choices they would regret by mid-morning. But these were scheduled. Joy had a calendar. Saturnalia. Approved chaos. Triumphs. Approved cheering. Gladiator games. Approved screaming, but only at the appropriate moments. Random joy on a Tuesday afternoon. Unacceptable. You weren't supposed to be too happy for no reason. Happiness needed context and supervision, which brings us to the Roman obsession with order. Roman elites believed society was like a body. Everyone had a role, and if one part twitched unexpectedly, the whole thing might collapse. So your job was to stay in your lane. Slaves stayed invisible, women stayed modest, men stayed dignified, children stayed quiet. And anyone who didn't, well, Rome had ways of reminding you. Not always violently, sometimes just socially. Disapproval was powerful in Rome. Being laughed at by the elite was worse than being fined. You could lose reputation, lose clients, lose political momentum, all because you wore the wrong color, or spoke too passionately, or showed too much enthusiasm for literally anything. Now, let's gently float over to the upper classes. Because if anyone lived under a microscope, it was Rome's elites. Senators were expected to embody calm rational authority at all times. This was difficult, because many of them were deeply unhinged. But they had to pretend. You could ruin your career by being seen as theatrical, too emotional, too dramatic. Cato the Younger famously prided himself on being aggressively dull. No luxury, no indulgence, just stoicism and judgment. People found him unbearable, which, in Rome, was a sign of moral excellence. Julius Caesar, on the other hand, was charming, stylish, a little too fashionable, and people noticed. There were rumors he wore his toga just a bit too carefully arranged. That he cared too much about appearance. In Rome, that was dangerous. Because caring too much suggested ambition. And ambition suggested emperor thoughts, which Caesar absolutely had. But we'll let him nap for now. Even leisure was regulated. Romans loved baths, huge bath complexes, social hubs. But even there, behavior was monitored. Who you talked to, how long you stayed, what you discussed. You weren't supposed to gossip excessively, or conspire, or flirt too openly, although people absolutely did all of those things. Rome had a strong tradition of pretending rules were followed while quietly breaking them. This was called civilization. Now, let's talk about women again. Because Rome certainly did. A woman's behavior reflected on her male relatives. Her father, her husband, her sons, which meant her freedom was, let's say, symbolic. She could own property, sometimes. She could manage households. She could influence politics indirectly. But she could not be loud, or sexually autonomous, or publicly emotional. A woman expressing anger was hysterical. A woman expressing joy was improper. A woman expressing grief too openly was embarrassing. Basically, emotions were a male-only privilege. And even then, only certain men, at certain times. Which is impressive, considering how much Roman history is just elite men having emotional meltdowns. But they called those policy disagreements. Now, let's pause gently here, because what Rome really feared wasn't noise, or color, or happiness. It was unpredictability. Rome functioned because everyone knew the script. You knew how to dress, how to speak, how to behave, and if you didn't, you weren't free, you were suspicious. Freedom in Rome wasn't about self-expression. It was about permission. Permission granted by tradition, by class, by gender, by birth. You were free, as long as you didn't make anyone uncomfortable. And discomfort, in Rome, was basically treason. So as you drift off tonight, imagine walking through the forum. Stone underfoot, muted togas everywhere, voices low and measured, everyone performing calmness, everyone pretending stability, because Rome wasn't built on chaos. It was built on the careful suppression of it. And next time, we'll gently meet the people who found this exhausting, and broke the rules anyway. But for now, just let Rome hum quietly in the background. Controlled, orderly, and very, very nervous. Freedom, but quietly, and preferably in beige because beige never starts revolutions. Alright, settle back in. If you nodded off somewhere between muted togas and very nervous, that's perfect. That's the correct Roman response. Now let's continue drifting through Rome. Still calm, still beige, still pretending everyone is fine. Because here's the thing about Rome. They didn't just regulate freedom in public. They regulated it inside your own house. Which is impressive, and deeply exhausting. The Roman household was not a private space. It was a miniature state. With a ruler. That ruler was the paterfamilias. Which sounds noble, and official, and it was. The paterfamilias had legal authority over everyone in the household. Wife, children, slaves, adult sons. Yes, adult sons. A Roman man could be 45 years old, with a wife, children, and a respectable toga. and still technically be under his father's authority. Rome loved hierarchy. It was their emotional support system. The paterfamilias controlled finances, marriages, punishments, and family honor. In early periods, he even had the theoretical right to execute family members. This was rarely done, mostly, but the fact that it existed tells you a lot about Roman ideas of freedom. You were free, as long as the correct man approved. And emotional expression inside the household, also regulated. Children were expected to be obedient, quiet, emotionally restrained. A crying child was not overstimulated. It was undisciplined. A laughing child was not joyful. It was becoming soft. Rome feared softness the way modern people fear unread notifications. Women were expected to manage households efficiently and silently, running an entire domestic economy without appearing stressed, which is an impossible task. But Rome believed in impossible standards. If a woman complained too openly about her situation, that reflected poorly on her husband. So she learned to complain quietly, subtly, in ways that sounded like compliments. Roman communication was advanced like that. Now let's step back outside. Slowly, carefully, because public space in Rome was where freedom was most aggressively policed. The forum wasn't just a marketplace or political center. It was a performance stage. Everyone there was being watched. Your walk, your posture, your tone of voice. Standing too confidently could make people suspicious. Standing too humbly could make you invisible. You had to hit the exact middle. Confident, but not threatening. Articulate, but not emotional. Present, but not noticeable. Basically, act like a Roman senator even if you weren't one. Which most people weren't. This created a fascinating problem. Rome loved the idea of the outspoken citizen. The man who participated in public life. Who debated, who voted, who served, but they hated actual spontaneity. So Roman public life became ritualized. You didn't just speak your mind. You followed conventions. Even protests had rules. You could express dissatisfaction, politely, indirectly, preferably through poetry. Yes, poetry. Romans loved satire, as long as it didn't name names too clearly. Poets could criticize society, morality, and even leadership. But only if it was vague enough to maintain plausible deniability. Say something too direct, and suddenly you're in exile. Writing very sad poems about missing Rome. Looking at you, Ovid. Exile was Rome's favorite nonviolent punishment. It was quiet, clean, socially efficient. You weren't executed, you were erased. Which, honestly, might have been worse. Now let's talk about the crowd. Because Rome was terrified of crowds. Crowds were unpredictable. Crowds were emotional. Crowds forgot their place. So Rome controlled them carefully. Public gatherings were monitored. Festivals were supervised. Games were orchestrated. Even applause had expectations. Too little applause. Insulting. Too much applause. Suspicious. Cheering the wrong person too loudly could ruin your career. This is why emperors became obsessed with popularity. They needed approval, but controlled approval. They wanted cheering, but not independent thought, which is a delicate balance. The crowd could love you, but only on schedule, and the emperors leaned into this. They gave bread and circuses. Entertainment is emotional regulation. Keep people fed, keep them distracted, keep them from thinking too hard. Thinking led to opinions. Opinions led to discussions. Discussions led to unrest. And unrest led to paperwork. No one wanted paperwork. Now let's gently drift into religion. Because Rome regulated the two. Romans were deeply religious, but not in an emotional way. Religion was transactional. You performed the ritual correctly. The gods provided stability. Feeling too much spiritual passion was odd. Mystery cults made elites uncomfortable. Too much emotion. Too much personal devotion. That kind of thing encouraged people to feel special. And Rome didn't like individuals feeling special. Unless they were senators, or emperors. So state religion focused on tradition. Repetition. Precision. Say the words correctly. Make the offering. Move on. Faith was about order, not ecstasy. Ecstasy was suspicious. Now let's talk about class. Because freedom in Rome was heavily class-dependent. If you were wealthy, you had more freedom to bend the rules. You could be eccentric, to a point. You could host lavish dinners, dress slightly better, speak a little louder. Money softened consequences. But if you were poor, or enslaved, freedom became theoretical. Enslaved people had almost no legal freedom. Their bodies, time, and labor belonged to someone else. They could be punished for tone, for facial expressions, for existing incorrectly, which is why Roman society depended so heavily on performative calm. Any sign of discontent from below made elites nervous. Because they knew the math. They were outnumbered. This is why Roman order was obsessive. Control clothing, control speech, control gatherings, control joy. If everything stays predictable, nothing explodes. At least, that was the plan. Now let's talk about luxury. Because Rome had very complicated feelings about it. Romans loved luxury. They just hated admitting it. Publicly, they praised simplicity, private virtue, traditional values. Privately, they had gold plates, silk cushions, and entire rooms dedicated to reclining. But too much luxury was morally dangerous. So laws were passed regulating spending. What you could wear, what you could serve at dinner. Sumptuary laws. Basically, enjoy yourself, but not visibly. Which is such a Roman mood. You could be rich, just don't remind anyone. And if you did remind them, they would talk. Oh, would they talk? Roman gossip was lethal. Reputation mattered more than law. A whisper could undo decades of careful conformity. So people learned to self-censor. Not because they were afraid of punishment, but because they were afraid of being noticed. And that's the key thing to understand about Roman freedom. It wasn't enforced primarily by soldiers or guards. It was enforced by expectation. Everyone knew the rules. Everyone watched everyone else. You didn't need to be told to quiet down. You quieted yourself. You didn't need to be told to dress modestly. You dressed modestly. You didn't need to be told to control your emotions. You swallowed them. Rome didn't suppress freedom loudly. It smothered it gently, layer by layer, custom by custom. So by the time someone actually rebelled, everyone else was shocked. How did this happen? They would ask. After centuries of emotional repression. Now let's slow down again. Picture Rome at dusk. Shadows stretching across stone. The forum emptying. Voices lowering. People heading home. Togas folded carefully. Everyone performing contentment. Because freedom existed. Of course it did. Rome said so. It just existed quietly, carefully, safely. And in the next part, we'll meet the people who couldn't manage that. The ones who spoke too loudly, dressed too boldly, or felt too much, and what Rome did to them. But not yet. For now, rest. Let Rome remain orderly, controlled, and softly beige, exactly the way it liked it.